Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Thursday, October 24th, 2024, which makes this the news for Wednesday, October 23rd, day 974 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv. I'm here in this major European capital city that is under siege. And the peeps are coming in. There's PT, Cheyenne, Vanetta, Chef Deb, Cool, Sharon Davies. Nice to see you guys. Hey, Travis, how you living? Hey, PH. Lame, how you doing? Evening. Steve, Paul, Bobby is here. Steve-O. If anybody sees our buddy Brendan Hoy, Brendan is the sponsor of tonight's live. Thank Brendan for us. Hey, Darlene. Hey, Russell Kennedy. How you living? Hey, Steve with a V. How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Renee Herman. So folks are coming in. Big P. Big P. Right on. Hey, Trash Hunter. How you guys? All right. So this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv, bringing you all the latest happenings from on the ground here in this major European capital that is under siege. This is the news for Wednesday, October the 23rd, day 974 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. And I am the Big P, Peter Alexievich, coming to you live from Kyiv. So the first thing is last night's missile and drone attacks. Now, we're under an air raid now. I just posted a video of the sirens going off. But last night's attacks, 81 drones were sent on the territory of Ukraine. At least 72 of them were neutralized by electronic warfare and shrapnel. Mostly. Now, I published a video earlier today. I wanted to take a look at the BRICS summit that's happening in Kazan, Russia. That summit is not getting any international attention, and we'll talk about why. But I think that there is much more going on there. So the first thing to mention, of course, is the T attack in Ankara, Turkey today. Two gunmen entered the facility of TUSAS, which is a state-owned aerospace firm, right? So it's owned by the armed forces of Turkey. And these gunmen unalived 3 people, and they themselves were unalived. So 5 people are unalived in Turkey today. Because of that, President Erdogan of Turkey is leaving the BRICS summit early. Now, it is important to note that Turkey is not in BRICS. They're looking to get into BRICS, but they are not in BRICS yet. Though I do have some more comments on Turkey. As President Erdogan flies home to Turkey because of the terror attack, his son-in-law, the chief executive officer of Baykar, the maker of the Bayraktar drone, was in Kyiv. So the Turkish manufacturer of the Bayraktar drone, after having provided Ukraine with $100 million in military assistance over the course of this war, more than some countries, they were in Ukraine today, and they signed an agreement with the Ukrainian government, but the details are undisclosed. One can assume that it is for the manufacture of Bayraktar drones here in Ukraine. But we don't know that to be true, and we certainly don't know the details. So this is an interesting place to be in, where you can see very clearly, I think, the fine line that Turkey is walking here. Erdogan is out at BRICS trying to make friends and maintain relationships with the powers to the east, while his son-in-law is in Kyiv trying to make relationships and maintain relationships with the powers that are increasingly westward facing. Turkey walks that fine line like so many others that were under the influence of the Soviet sphere. Now, this BRICS summit, it is worth noting that Serbia is, the Serbian president is not in attendance. Representatives are there, of course. But the Serbian president did not attend. The Cuban president did not attend. Cuba, like Turkey, is a candidate for BRICS membership. They're not in yet. Most importantly, I think, Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia did not attend, declined the invitation, while Brazil's president had an unfortunate accident in the shower, and because he twisted his ankle bad in the shower, he can't go. I guess that's the diplomatic equivalent of my dog ate my homework kind of a response. So in BRICS, Brazil itself is not in attendance. And most importantly, I think Mohammed bin Salman was not in attendance. So Erdogan, the president of Turkey, was there in Kazan in the Federal Republic of Tatarstan, Russian Federation. Turkey, of course, is a NATO ally, but they have deep cultural and economic ties to Russia, like so many of the post-Soviet states. They have walked a tightrope between support for Ukraine and its sovereignty, which Erdogan has been unflagging in his support of, and appeasement to Moscow, or, outright trying to get something out of Moscow. What's really happening at BRICS, and what does it mean? Well, for his part, I think Putin's part in this is obvious, and his motivations are clear. He wants, principally, for his own domestic audience, but also for the world. He wants to show the world and the people inside, very much of this will be internal consumption, right? He's been on the TV the last 2 days. He's going to be on the TV the next couple days, all about how Russia still matters in the world. It may not be the bipolar world of DC and Moscow, the great superpowers anymore, but it's a multipolar world where Russia still matters. That's his message. Russia has powerful allies. The president of China is there. The president of India is there. Between the two of them, those two men represent 1 in 3 people on the planet. A third of the world lives in China and India. Russia has expanding economic ties and influence in the world. This is what he wants people to understand. He's working for the benefit and future of Russia and the Russian people. And frankly, at the very basic level, Russia wants the world to understand that the Kremlin is a legitimate government. Clearly, it is my opinion that they are not. They are a terrorist regime that has forfeited its right to existence through its multiple violations of international norms, law, treaty, and the UN Charter. It's just that simple. So Putin wants to put on a happy face, and I am sure that when the TV cameras turn to Xi and turn to Modi, everybody will smile and shake hands and put up a unified front. You can be sure that that's how that will look. But what's really going on? This consortium of leaders are likely to put a happy face forward and present that unified front to the world. But in the back rooms, in the private meetings with Putin and heads of state, what are they likely talking about? What are they likely to say to each other in the privacy of a one-to-one meeting that is afforded by this summit? Given the way that North Korea has historically played Russia and China off each other for influence and for favor, Putin is likely getting an earful from Xi of China. It doesn't seem likely that he got China's permission to get those troops from North Korea. And it doesn't seem likely that the Chinese are happy about it. This will be an opportunity for Xi to express his displeasure at this new escalation and destabilization, which the Chinese hate. They want to know how things are going, and they want them to keep going that way. They want stability in the world above all else. What will come out of this? Now, some folks are suggesting that Xi did give his permission, that the North Koreans and the Russians had his blessing. If that is true, there will be no changes in any way to any of the relationships between China and Russia, right? I think that's a pretty safe bet, because there is no bone of contention. They had permission from China to bring the North Koreans in. They know that. We don't have to. If after this meeting we see no more North Korean troops come into Russia, that it's just this 10,000 and done, I would argue that probably President Xi expressed his displeasure over this move and is likely taking North Korea to task as well. We will see in the next, few weeks, few months, what happens, what emerges between Russia and China and China and North Korea. Let's watch that closely, because I cannot believe that Xi is happy about it. We have seen secondary sanctions tank Russian oil sales to India and China. Crude oil sales now out of Russia are at $192 million a day. That's a $52 billion a year loss from the 2022 figures. It's huge. If you factor in refined oil product sales, the Russian economy is down $104 billion in oil and gas revenues. In oil and refined oil products revenues. There's another 100 billion loss in the, I think 71 billion. I think I'd have to check it. Don't quote me on that. But it's a substantial amount of money lost on natural gas sales as well. The 104 billion loss just on oil and refined oil products, that's 5% of Russia's all-up economy. Huge, huge. Could we see North Korea's withdrawal following this summit if there is political pressure on Putin from these allies to do just that? Or could we see China and India buying more oil? Could there be new agreements for the export of oil? Or should we expect to see some other arrangements that don't fly in the face of sanctions, like the barter relationship that we see emerging with Pakistan, where Russia is sending corn and lentils to Pakistan, and Pakistan is sending back mandarins and rice, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a barter relationship, like you're on the wild frontier, a guy with beaver pelts and a guy with some corn. It's insanity, absolute insanity. But given secondary sanctions and the problems of getting paid, which are only getting worse for Russia, we can expect to see more creative solutions like this. Turkey's Erdogan. Now, again, he did have to leave because of the terror attack in Ankara. But before he left, he couldn't be happy. He was furious the last time that he met with Putin personally, upon leaving the summer palace at Sochi, having failed to reestablish the grain deal and the grain corridor. He was pissed. Further, we know that Turkey, whose economy is struggling, wants more Russian pipelines and natural gas that he can resell profitably to Europe, which has lost its Russian supplier. Will we see new pipeline announcements? Could Erdogan get Putin to stop bombing grain shipments? Is that even on Erdogan's list? Just yesterday, we had Keir Starmer say that the global food supply, including aid for Gaza, is being threatened by Russian aggression in Odessa and the missile strikes on grain ships there. What's the conversation with the Saudi Arabians going to look like? Now, Mohammed bin Salman is not there, so Putin is likely to be receiving a message from his subordinates, and his subordinates will bring him the response back home. What might that message be? If Mohammed bin Salman was there, what do you think Putin would ask him? He might ask him something along the lines of, why are you stabbing me in the back? Why are you increasing oil production? Why are you about to drive down prices of crude oil just when I am most desperate for every penny I can get per barrel? Why are you doing this to me? And what might Mohammed bin Salman have said? Would he have said, my friend, I'm sorry, but we have money problems of our own, and I got to bring in some cash. I'm sorry to do this. If it affects you badly, I'm sorry, but I have to do it for us. Or, more likely, in my opinion, regardless of what the truth is he likely to turn to Putin and say, my dear friend Vladimir, that's a bad accent, I'm not going to do it. My dear friend Vladimir, of course I am not doing this to hurt you. I am doing this to help you, my friend. We will drive down the cost. Remember what we did together in 2018 when we had our price war and we almost drove the filthy American oil shale business bankrupt? We could do it again. We'll drive the price so low that we'll shut down the Americans forever, and that will work to your advantage as much as mine. He might say something like that. I think it would be a load of shit, because low oil prices is going to not do any good for Moscow, just the opposite. And that is the direction that we are headed in. Okay. India's Modi. The United Arab Emirates are also in attendance. And it's the United Arab Emirates banks that have been financing and underwriting, bankrolling the RU oil purchases for India. They have pulled out of that business. They are no longer doing any of that out of fear of secondary sanctions from the US. China, India, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, they may all intellectually support Russia, but they do not want to lose their markets in the West. They can't afford it. They see what happened to Putin when he killed the goose that laid the golden egg. When he shut off gas to Europe, Gazprom posted its first loss in 25 years. Total loss about $7 billion US, not rubles, real money. What else is happening with Modi? Oh, Russian oil sales to India have collapsed. Between the withdrawal of the UAE financing everything and the Iraqis trying to reclaim their place as India's number one supplier of crude oil and underselling the Russians. Before the full-scale invasion, India bought about 24% of its oil from Iraq. And Iraq is in there pitching, trying to win that business back. What does Modi want from Putin? And I can't say that I have an answer to that. Surely Putin will be trying to sell more oil to India and to China. But will he find a buyer there? And then the question becomes, so I think that there's probably an awful lot of background tension between these, so-called partners without limits. I think that there are lots of limitations, and I think that they're going to be discussing them ad nauseum. But the real question is, does any of this matter? Do you know that the BRICS nations didn't even come up with the term BRICS? I mean, seriously, these guys lack the ability to do any kind of innovation at all. The term BRICS is going to crush the US dollar. Oh, you're funny. Hey, Mike, tell me you can't do math without telling me you can't do math. Let's talk about why Mike is mistaken. The guy who came up with the term BRIC back before South Africa joined, and it became BRICS, was a guy named Jim O'Neill, who worked at Goldman Sachs. He was an economist over at Goldman Sachs. And he's the one who coined the term BRIC. He was quoted by the BBC World Service this week as saying, BRICS don't matter. And he means that, of course, in the great sense of the global GDP and global economy. The idea of a BRICS currency, when the Russian ruble is in free fall, is a joke. It's a joke. Nobody's going there. That's the ruble is a dead currency. It can't contribute to creating a new currency. It's not even a possibility. We look at China. China does not want to give up its Western markets, right? Russia was bragging that in 2023, their goal for combined imports and exports between Russia and China would be $200 billion. That was their stated goal, $200 billion. And they surpassed it with $226 billion in business imports, exports combined between the two countries, 2023. The same year that Walmart, a single Western retailer, did $211 billion in business. The backward nature of these economies, particularly the Russian one, based as it is on theft and grift and graft, cannot compare with the incredible free market engine, the greatest engine for creating wealth that the world has ever known, that is the United States. So it is a joke to think that there will ever be a BRICS currency or that the ruble has a future. In terms of China, now look, if China really does get pissed about these North Koreans, they can shut down the business. They can shut down the business with Russia. Sure, total Russian imports from China account for 40%. Total Russian exports to China account for 36% of all Russian exports. But for China, imports and exports to Russia are between 2 and 3%. Nothing. They could shut down the border, stop doing all business, and China would hardly notice. The price of caviar might go up. Fur coats might go up. But beyond that, that's it. In terms of the global economy, all of the BRICS nations together are 48% of the world population, but 28% of global GDP. And that is because the systems in place are inferior to ours in the West. That's why. Again, based on theft, based on grift, based on graft. Fundamentally flawed. South Africa, China, and India, Saudi Arabia, India, and China want to protect their Western markets and are unlikely to do anything in the near term to destabilize those markets or stop the revenue flow into their pockets. Unlikely to happen. It will be very interesting, I think, to see what kind of fallout comes from this meeting, if any, that might give us some indication as to what the backroom conversations really were like at this BRICS. So I think that's it for me on BRICS. I feel like there was one other thing I wanted to say. Oh, yeah. Secretary General Guterres is there. I think that that's a sin. I think that it is an abnegation of duty. I think that he is by embracing this monster Putin, this terror state, and refusing to attend the Ukrainian peace summit. He is legitimizing the courts of chaos in the world. Dollar only benefits the USA, said somebody here who has already been blocked. Thank you. Tell me you've never taken an international economics class without telling me you've never taken an international economics class. I mean, anyway, Secretary General of the UN is there, embracing Putin and legitimizing this nonsense, while delegitimizing, refusing to attend the Ukraine peace summit. I believe that this constitutes a good reason to write a letter demanding his resignation in the absolute abject way in which he has failed to embody the principles of the UN Charter. Some people love a dictator, yeah, because they don't want to think for themselves. It's easy not to think for yourself. It's easy not to have to understand the world. Just be told a pleasant story that sounds like the things you should believe. It's so much easier. Right? You know your brain uses a third of the calories you take in. If you're being starved to death intentionally, like the North Koreans, the last thing you want to do is do any thinking. Literally, you don't have the calories for it. So it's my opinion that this fella should resign, that he is part of the problem. Vanetta and I had a conversation today. We worked out kind of the broad parameters for the letter. And I am pleased to say that because this is the UN, this letter is not restricted just to Americans, the way all of our letters to Congress, the President, and the White House have been. Or I'm sorry, the Congress, the Senate, and the White House have been. So once we get this thing done, we will put it up, and hopefully everybody will send it off to the Undersecretary or Deputy Secretary for the UN, demanding this guy's resignation. It did remind me, though, today, when I saw him in the pictures from the BRICS summit, his hosts, the Volga Tatars, which is where we get the name Tataristan, right, or Tartaristan, dressed him in classic fashion. So the Tatars that live there have their own separate language, culture, religion from Russia, separate and distinct, because they are a conquered people. Even though they're in the Russian Federation, they are not Russian. And it is worth remembering that as an autonomous federal district of the Russian Federation, the Tatars have an executive branch, a judicial branch, and a legislative body. They are one step away from being an independent nation. One step away. Steve McStevens, it's Tatar. Tartar is the sauce that you put on your fish. So it's Tatar. Richard Prex has got it right. Okay, so that's BRICS. Now, the other big news this week, of course, is North Korea. The United States has acknowledged and confirmed the presence of North Korean forces in Ukraine. Lloyd Austin confirmed that. South Korean officials claim that North Korea has sent pilots to Vladivostok for training, likely on Su-25s, which the South Korean Air Force flies. But that is the most modern plane that the North Korean Air Force flies, which is the most modern jet that the North Korean Air Force has available to it. South Korea has sent officers to Kyiv, intelligence officers, to interrogate POWs, to find out what they know, to share information about what the South Koreans know about North Korean tactics and persons. It was revealed this week that South Korean intelligence officers, in conjunction and in coordination with the GUR of Ukraine and some AI tools, had identified individual North Korean officers that are present in Ukraine and Moscow. You guys know a couple weeks ago, I reported that the military academy in Moscow had been hit. It didn't occur to me, why hit it now? And apparently the reason was that the HUR here in Ukraine, the Military Intelligence Directorate, had evidence that there were North Koreans there getting training. And so just like Ukraine hit the 3 training fields down in Donetsk, eliminating many of the North Korean soldiery that was there for training, they hit the military training school in Moscow, which had to shake those North Koreans up. They're 450 kilometers from the front line. They're nowhere near where the fighting is. They're deep in the heart of Moscow at a school, and drones hit the school. Ukrainian drones, right? Had to shake them up, had to give them pause. You know, if Kim sends these 12,000 troops and none of them come home, is he likely to send more? Well, George Barrows from the ISW gave an interview to Times Radio today, and he said a lot of good things. So I want to quote him because he's really the expert here. He is skeptical of North Korean effectiveness in Ukraine. How will the Russians even use them? Will they just pour them into the meat grinder? Or will they use them to relieve Russian forces on dormant parts of the front line like Kherson? You could dump 10 or 12,000 North Koreans into Kherson, rotate the Russians out, and send the Russians to Kursk, and just let the North Koreans hold that ground on behalf of the Russians. If they are deployed together, how effective will they be? If they are broken up into small units, they are likely to even be less effective because they don't speak Russian and the Russians don't speak Korean. There is a problem there with the language barrier. These troops are completely untested. They have never been in battle. They have never been outside North Korea. They are as poorly equipped as the modern world allows and lets you still call yourself an army. Now, this was the critical part of his discussion. So for George Barros from the Institute for the Study of War, he cannot imagine that the North Koreans are an effective fighting force that can integrate into the Russian military. He does not believe that 10 or 12,000 of these guys are going to make any difference to Russia. He actually made the point that that's about 9 or 10 days worth of casualties. And that's all it is. And he said, quote unquote, I don't see how that 10 to 12,000 guys can be that effective. Asterisks. Unless they become the troops of a North Korean pipeline that will pump tens of thousands of North Koreans going to the Ukrainian front line. If Kim is prepared to sacrifice 100,000 North Koreans and just send them off to the meat grinder, that kind of mass will have an effect on the front line, according to Mr. Barros, and it is what concerns him. He told us some things about the Russian army, too. It's a volunteer army that recruits people by paying them bonuses. 2 years ago, those bonuses were about 10,000 rubles, which is, about $100, right? About $100 today. Today, those bonuses are 1 to 2 million rubles. 1 to 2 million rubles. That's like $20,000, right? Yeah, $20,000. So, why did Putin go to North Korea? He's running out of volunteers, is what George believes. The last comment that Mr. Barros made in this interview I thought was very interesting. He also expressed his deep skepticism that Russia will take Pokrovsk this year. He doesn't see Russia taking Pokrovsk this year. And that was music to my ear holes. All right, just a couple other items real quick. The GUR has expanded the I Want to Believe hotline to Korean. They want the Koreans to know that they can surrender and get 3 hots and a cot. Fighting is intense across the entire front line, but there are no real confirmed map changes. In Kursk, there is intense fighting and counterattacks continuing on the northern side of that incursion, the western side, and the eastern side. I have an update on Kursk on the Patreon for anybody that's a Patreon supporter, free account or paid. Check it out. Ukraine continues to target manufacturing in Russia, particularly synthetic rubber, chemical, and ethanol processing plants. A year-long offensive has resulted in a 0.1% land gain for the Russians at huge cost. And that 0.1% actually disappears if you count the territory in Russia that is currently under Ukrainian control. In Kursk, Russian pilots are complaining that they aren't getting their bonuses for bombing Russian territories. So apparently, the Russian government, to get Russian pilots to drop bombs on Russia, had to agree to pay them more, and now, of course, they're not. Imagine your surprise. I am shocked and amazed. I am certain you are as well. Finally, 2 items in the news. The Apple Store has removed the Russian app for Radio Free Europe, or Liberty Radio. which was a source of hope and inspiration to millions during the Cold War. And now Apple, aiding in the suppression of free speech in Europe and undermining basic human rights standards in the world, has appeased the Russian government and, at their request, removed the Radio Free Europe app from the Apple Store, which I think is tragic. And it's a problem in the US, right? You know, you make a movie, you want to sell your movie in China, but you have a problem with it that the Chinese don't like. So you have to edit the movie to edit out your problem. Why did they take it out of the App Store? Simply because the Russian Federation asked them to, claiming that the information that it disseminated was illegal inside of Russia. Because you can't criticize anybody in Russia. That's a crime, right? Now, this is not a thing yet. I want to highlight that. It will not become a thing until the Ukrainian airspace reopens. However, the Supernova airline company, a Ukrainian airline company, has purchased 14 routes, 7 a week from Lviv to Prague, and 7 a week from Kyiv to Prague. Now, again, they can't actually make the flights while the airspace is closed, but the hope is that when the airspace reopens once again, they will be in a position to start those flights up immediately. So it appears to be an aspirational long-term strategy to secure those routes while the gates are available in Prague. Okay. I'm with you, Bobby. Apple is on the wrong side. I'm going to write my stiffly worded letter tomorrow. Okay, so again, let's everybody please, if you see Brendan Hoy around, please thank him as the sponsor of tonight's live. Let's also thank the moderator team, best moderators on the Tickety Talk, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, Jay, and Travis. Let's also thank Nightshade, who has the Peters Peeps public group on the Book of Faces, where I post these lives after the fact. And let's thank Lars, who has the Discord server in the Alexievich archive. And let's please all give it up for Vanetta, who's managing the Google Doc share, where you will soon be able to get our letter demanding the resignation of the UN Secretary General. Hey, Birdie. Okay, so that's it for me. Questions, comments, points of observation, or personal need from the attendees. Anybody out there have any questions? Brendan was the sponsor of tonight's live. Chris Carter is tomorrow. And Ballerina is Friday. And then I've got no sponsors for next week. So if anybody's interested in sponsoring a live, the PayPal is in the description. Lars is saying you can change your country settings on a phone and get other app stores. Yeah, you can if you can get a VPN that works. Remember, Russia's been outlawing VPNs. You can't advertise VPNs for sale in Russia. The largest VPN companies have all had their ports blocked. So you can't VPN with, say, Symantec out of Russia. Doesn't work. It's not going to work. They control the information. They control what the people see, Lars. Hey, CyberDoc. What else is going on out there? No, he doesn't hear machine gun fire. He's hearing the chain guns from the Gepards. They're shooting down drones. That's what he's hearing, Laurel. How's Denver doing, Dark Irish? He is a good-looking dog, boy. Lars, it doesn't matter if you can sideload apps or whatever. None of that matters. If the ports for the app are blocked at the international border, at the routers outside of the country, they don't fucking work. Come on. It's a problem. Hey, Russell Kennedy. Hey, Parda. Anything is better than North Korea, even Russia. Like if you told me you had to go to live in a nightmare world of Russia, Tehran, let's say Moscow, Tehran, or Pyongyang, where would you like to go? I can tell you right now, Moscow would be my first choice in that list. And Tehran would be my second choice over Pyongyang. I don't know if Apple stores are still open in Russia. That's a great question. Other questions? Send me the video. Didn't you take video? Isn't that what you just said? Well, whatever. I look forward to getting it. Good evening, Feisty. I really don't know. I don't know if Apple's on the list of still doing business in Russia or not. Oh, I mean, as a woman, Tehran and Pyongyang, I mean, that's... Or even Moscow, I mean. Kursk is holding, Bobby. Did you see my Kursk update on the Patreon today? Putin's birthday present is still on fire in Crimea? You talking about the marine oil terminal? I think that's out. Check it out, Bobby. I think you'll find it interesting. Has mud season started yet? Yes, it has. Musk is coming out with a Tesla phone. I'm sure Russian citizens will be the first to get it. Bridge is still hanging on by a thread. Hang on, I'm checking the weather app here. Let's take a look at what the weather is out on the front line, shall we? So it is 46 degrees. What is that, like 7 or 8 Celsius? And looking at the next 7 days, it's overcast and partly cloudy, but no rain in the forecast. Overnight lows down to around 36, daytime highs around 50. So that's about, overnight lows of about 2 or 3, daytime highs of about 18. Yeah, I'm with you, Bip. I would never buy a Tesla product. Never. I don't even go on X. I mean, I really try to avoid it. Every once in a while, there's some breaking news that gets broke on X. But for the most part, it's garbage. It's just Russian propaganda. Okay, I mentioned this, Nicola. The Lviv airport is not reopening. That's not a thing. The airspace over this country is closed. However, Supernova Airlines, the Ukrainian airline, has gotten permission. When airspace reopens, they've got 7 flights a week from Lviv to Prague. And that's it. 7 flights a week from Lviv to Prague and 7 flights a week from Kyiv to Prague. And I think it was probably more around gate guarantees for Supernova in Prague than anything else. SpaceX is a private company, so naturally their competition would be other private companies. Exactly, Bip. Musk never came up with anything. He just bought other people's great ideas because he was born with generational wealth stolen from Africa, period. And this thing with him, oh, so get this. So that whole contest with the $1 million winners that he's doing is definitely illegal. Definitely. Some legal analysts are saying there's some gray area. I don't think so. Seems pretty cut and dried to me. But get this, he did the thing, he announced it when there was only 1 day left to register in Pennsylvania. So how many winners, I mean, how much could he have gotten done in 1 day of registration? Because there's a deadline to register before elections, right? You can't register right up to the election. DOJ issued in papers today to cease and desist. Good. I looked. I didn't see that. Where did you see that? Do you know? But I looked for it. Wouldn't be the DOJ, though, right? It would be the Attorney General's office in Pennsylvania. Just happened an hour ago. In some states, you have same-day registration. Not in Pennsylvania, baby. Not in Pennsylvania. Interesting. Well, we'll talk about it tomorrow night for sure then. Civil Rights Division. That's an I mean, one would think so, V. I don't know why I thought it would go to Pennsylvania. Maybe because I'm from Pennsylvania. I don't know. Sure, of course it's a criminal crime. Of course the DOJ makes perfect sense. It's just the DOJ moves slow. That'd be great effing hell, wouldn't it? So you get your vote, or you get your ballot off of, I forget what it's called, overseasvoter.org or gov or something like that. You download your ballot, and then you bring your ID and your ballot and your sealed envelopes over to the embassy. And then the embassy puts them away, and then sometimes you hear, right, that a race is so close to call that they have to count the overseas ballots. Now, there's never that many of them, right? In a big state like Pennsylvania, mine might be one of 2,000 or so. And so if somebody's lost an election by less than 2,000 votes, they don't declare a winner until the overseas ballots have been opened and counted. I did work for the John Fetterman campaign back in 2022 when he first got elected. It was probably that experience that, or maybe without that experience, I should say, I would not be here today. No, I haven't actually gotten over to the embassy yet to drop it off. I got to do that this week, Jedi. Correct. So Dark Irish makes an excellent point on the subject of John Fetterman. When was he elected? I want to say 2006, when he was first elected mayor of his little town out in Pennsylvania. And he won that election by one vote. If one person had stayed home, it would have been a tie. If he had not voted for himself and one person stayed home, he would have lost. And so you can't tell me, right, that voting doesn't matter. It matters. And everybody needs to vote, right? For the Democrats, you got to get, and the independents, you got to get out and vote on November 6th. But Trump has let all of the Republicans know they don't have to vote until January 5th. So for Republicans, you should be voting January 5th, and everybody else will be voting November 6th. Yeah, well, we'll see. Okay. Guys, it's 1 o'clock in the morning here. Yeah, if you're one of the states with early voting, just get it done. Vote early, vote often. This is not Chicago in 1926. Yeah, I wish you were sending billions of dollars worth of aid over here. They voted for it, but it's not getting sent. That's a problem. Okay, kids. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate everybody stopping by. We'll be back tomorrow. PayPal's in the description if you want to sponsor live. And the Patreon is there. Guys, if you are not on the Patreon, checking out the Patreon exclusive content, I encourage you to please make a free account for Patreon and take a look at that content. Some of it I'm happy with it. Some of it I'm a little bit proud of, and it's going to get better, and there's going to be more of it. Because I'm just constantly battling the suppression algorithms on TikTok. And there's 86 people who fund my entire life. They are Patreon supporters. And so I want to make sure that they're getting value for their money. You working through the videos now, Lars? Thanks, pal. So please, if you haven't joined the Patreon yet, and you think, oh, I have to sign up to send them money every month, you don't. You can get a free membership, and you can see all of the stuff that I publish for members only. That includes free members. Thanks, Dark Irish. I would check TikTok less, man, because I'm going to be doing less here, and there'll be Patreon exclusive content over on the other. Yeah, I don't drink beer, really. And I have there's a couple bottles of wine in there that were left over from a night where I had some people over and everybody brought wine. So I'm good on all that effing hell. Right, Fitz. Everybody that's on the Patreon should get alerted when new content is posted. So if you use your email or whatever the communication mechanism is, you should get an alert to any new postings. To see all the Patreon content, you would have to be a paid member, yes. There are behind-the-scenes videos that are not available to free members. But that's not news, right? for most people, I'm not the interesting thing. Ukraine is the interesting thing. So if your only interest is Ukraine, then a free account is going to get you access to everything that's of real interest, the news. If you want more visibility into my life in Ukraine, the life of an American here trying to do this, then yes. $5 a month, Jedi. And you get all that too. I think, wait, am I wrong about this? I can't remember if this video is public or paid only. But I was making the video and I forgot I had ordered delivery. And the doorbell rings. And on the video, I'm like, oh, I guess we got to cut it short. I can't imagine who that is. Completely having forgotten that I ordered dinner, right? Like I have delivery coming. This is what happens when I start recording. And I thought I stopped the recording, but I didn't. So I come back with my food. The recording's still going. And so I finish my thoughts. Like I finished the recording. And it's in my opinion, I was happy with some of the things that I said in there that I might not have said if I didn't have that break, actually. Cheyenne saw it. So, anyway, all that, there's a lot of changes going on. I can't keep fighting these Russian suppression algorithms. As long as the Russians are paying to suppress Ukrainian creators, which I absolutely believe is the case, I'm going to just expand to other platforms as much as I can. All right. So, guys, again, I really appreciate it. And because you are there for me, I can be here for you. And I hope I am. Check out the stuff on the Patreon, see what you think. And let me know what you think. That's the great thing about the Patreon. There's only 177 members. That's a pretty manageable group of people. If you give me feedback on the Patreon videos, I'm going to get it directly. And then I can do something about it. All right, kids, make it a great day. Take care.